Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining another Lead Squared webinar. I am Shivani and I oversee multiple things in marketing at Lead Squared. You may have received an email or two from me in the past. So thank you so much again for joining us. It's all about healthcare today. So essentially we'll be talking about patient satisfaction, operational efficiency, and the ROI jackpot. Can you have it all? Yes, the answer is yes, you can have it all. Get ready to grab 70 years of learning in just 40 to 50 minutes. We will, of course, talk about how you can grow your ROI without hurting the extremely important patient experience. So, as you can see, I have a stellar panel with me today. Without wasting any more time, I will get into their intros. So, I have Mr. Saurav Gupta with us, who is the regional CEO of Kim's Hospital. He has over 20 years of experience and has worked at Medanta, Fortis, PwC, and McKinsey. Thank you so much, Saurabh, for joining us. We have Mr. Arvind Ganeshan, who is the head of digital strategy at Kaveri Hospital Group. With over 18 years in experience in health insurance, automotive, and more recently in the healthcare domains in implementing digital products and leading digital transformations. So a lot of tech news coming from there. We have Mr. Pradyut Chaudhary, who is the COO of RV Hospital. So he's an ex-government of India, Ministry of Defense, gazetted officer with over 20 years of experience in policy formulation, planning and execution, administration, operations, and management. So thank you so much, Pradyut. Arvind, for joining us. And finally, last but not the least, our very own Shraddha Somani, who is the Director of Large and Strategic Businesses at Lead Squared. She too has over 12 years of experience in helping build scalable businesses. Prior to Lead Squared, she was with Gartner. So I'm not going to waste any more time. So much to learn from our speakers and you too, Shraddha, today. Just a quick note before I disappear. We have the audience here with us. A quick note to the audience. If you have questions, comments, anything you'd like to share, please put it on chat and we'll certainly pick it up. We will also pick up your questions post the panel discussion. So anything on your mind, keep them coming. And yes, our team has put down some poll questions that we'd like you to answer. It's just for us to get more information about you. So with that, thank you so much, Shraddha. Please take it ahead.
Thank you so much, Shivani. And thank you so much, Pradyut, Arvind, Saurabh, for joining me here today. I think we'll just like to set the stage by saying that, you guys have been owners of, not just innovating or transforming, but you guys have seen the P&L industry, in the healthcare very, very closely, right? And today's aim is more so to understand the cost pillars, the revenue maximization pillars, as well as the role of technology in the same, right? So, and I know, we could have no better panel to kind of talk about these things because we have a multiple experience of 70 plus years, as Shibani said, across the cost, which is the operation side, as well as the digital transformation and the revenue maximization as the, as the role owners of the hospital industry. So thank you again for joining in. I'd like to kind of start with maybe bringing in some data points that I could actually observe over my previous journey with the healthcare industry. And as this particular year evolved, right, we are seeing like 8 to 10% of revenue projection in FY 2024 for overall industry. Another macro analysis of India says that we're expecting a 22 to 23% of operating profit margin across the hospital industry, right? And while government is taking, immensely strategic strategies as part of the Ayushman Bharat consortium, I am also amazed and stunned to see over 27,000 crores have been invested through private equity investors in the hospital industry, contributing to various, priorities of patient experience, preventive care, as well as innovations in the technology, right? But with growth, I also see and I witness the complexity that hospitals are facing today as part of my clientele as well, where they're trying to constantly create an equilibrium between managing their operational costs, ensuring revenues are maximized, and ensuring a delivery of patient care at a minimum cost. And that's a tough battle. And I'd like to kind of understand most of these things, in several sections of this particular webinar. So maybe let's begin with the first section where we can focus on the costs pillar first, and we could address some of the key problems that you as leaders of the hospital industry might be facing to create this equilibrium or create this balance of the cost hierarchy, right? So my first question is for Saurabh. Saurabh, what do you think are the key metrics for operational cost efficiency at Krishna Institute? Are there any specific processes? Are there any specific frameworks that you typically use in order to see which are the processes hindering the operational efficiency? If you could kind of highlight the overall broader level and set the stage for discussion.
Yeah, so Shraddha, thank you so much, and I would like to thank Lead Square for inviting me to this discussion. It's a privilege to be here. Now, when you talk about operational efficiency metrics, there can actually be more than 250 to 300 parameters which can be tracked at a hospital level. And let's appreciate the fact that hospitals are one of the most complex organizations humans have actually built. So it is not only the clinical processes. There are things which go beyond clinical processes. A lot of people don't know there are engineering departments, maintenance department. There are huge marketing department. So what you need is actually to look at the entire piece into a business operations, because ultimately we are all there. So again, you can actually divide these operational processes into three buckets. So one will be your clinical, and by clinical I am not talking about you are actually looking into the outcomes. Somebody looks into that, but more importantly, from a cost and operation viewpoint, you look at the adverse events, anything which increases your cost, any unaccounted hospital stay. So there are parameters like this. The second bucket would be your all the parameters related to non-clinical, like your HR cost, administrative cost, what is going into that, what is the consumption of fuel, what is the consumption of water, what is the consumption of material, all these things. And there is a third, which is actually the most important element, is all your patient related processes. So you have right from the point patient enters, again there are three steps. So one is when the patient enters the hospital, so your registration, admissions. The second is the patient stay, and the third is the patient exit. Now there are recent researches which show that 30%, 25-30% of the time of a patient actually gets invested in non-clinical work and hospital related work. See, patients actually come. See, we are all in hospitals to serve the patient, to treat the patient. Patients do not come there for filling of forms, to wait for registration, admission, and to wait for the discharge. Actually, this was actually a very good insight when I was reading this report, that almost 25% of the time is getting wasted in all these things. The average admission time for a patient in a multi-specialty hospital ranges from around 45 minutes to 2 hours, and the discharge time 4 to 6 hours, if the things are in good shape. If there is an insurance issue, it can even go to 8-9 hours. I have myself faced this in my lifetime. So what I'm trying to say, there are various parameters, but actually all these three are important. You need to understand the clinical buckets, anything which leads to any untoward incident or extended stay of patient, that needs to be monitored very quickly. And of course, the basic things, whether you are clinically delivering, there are parameters which tell you. The second bucket is all your operational things, right from the consumption to cost. And the third and the most important thing is patient related things. What is the patient wait time, whether his registration happened in time, whether discharge was proper or not. So you actually look at the gamut, and I use some scorecards and tools to arrive at that.
Sure. No, interesting as you say this, because I think it's gone are the days where, patients were just coming to the hospital. Now hospitals are in such a competitive space that you constantly have to create these differentiators of reducing the time of the patient taking for the admission processes, etc., by investing in technologies, by maybe reducing the TAT overall of your operational staff also to address them, right? So can I say that this is one of the top priority and maybe the maximum percentage of your operational costs as on today?
Cost? No,
Yeah,
cost is actually yeah. So cost actually goes into multiple things. If you see the P&L, you start from the consumption, the cost of material, and then you have manpower cost, doctor cost, and everything. But again, that is a typical P&L.
yeah,
There are efficiency built in every level. So you can optimize manpower, you can optimize consumption, you can optimize power, fuel,
yeah,
and there is a very important element which is like there is a cost for which no one pays, and that is where operational efficiency comes in. So patient waits for 6 hours in a room, nobody actually pays for that. Sometimes it is, and many times it is discounted. Patient is actually waiting in the lounge for the registration. Now it's a same day surgery admission. You can actually uh, utilize that time to perform a daycare surgery. You are actually losing on that revenue loss, cost
absolutely.
loss, cost increase. So this is the most important thing which a lot of us actually miss, because there is a cost of the activities which nobody is actually looking into.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. And I'd like to talk about this a little more around the lost revenue part and how can we devise better strategies to cover this particular gap and increase the growth opportunities. And what are we doing to solve this, on your end? Thank you for that insight, Saurabh. Arvind, can I ask you about not just this internal operational cost, but do you think there are external factors, like rising costs or pair policies that could be challenging for you at the moment to impact your top line or operating margins? Sorry, Arvind, I think you're on mute. Can you just check?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Sorry about that, and thank you for this opportunity to lead Square. Yeah, so to take this question, right, I mean, I'll probably divide it into three parts, right? When you look at external factors, we could probably first look at the market itself, right? And if you look at the big driver of cost, most of very high-end equipment that we use in hospitals are imported, right? I mean, about 65 to 70% of the equipment are imported, right? And that's a big cost pressure. And the requirement for quality of care in our populations is only growing, right? So we are basically bringing in more specialized procedures, more specialized treatments in hospitals,
Absolutely.
and not really passing on all the costs to the patient, even though these are being brought into the hospitals right now, right? So for example, robotic surgery as a procedure, if you take, the equipment itself costs a lot, and the AMC is also very expensive, but it's not as if you are passing all the costs to the patient. So that is kind of, but it is a requirement of the market, right? So that is one area where you would have this pressure on the margins, as you would see. Second is coming from a regulatory front, right? I mean, there are price caps coming in, there are import caps coming in, which is better in the long term, right? For example, look at the MedTech policy from 2021. You would see that by 2030, they want to really have a 45% share of equipment being built in India, right? And in the long term, that will probably be good for India and will probably have a lower cost in acquiring those equipment. But in the short term, that would be a bit expensive, right? I mean, that situation, that, and along with that, some price caps on, let's say, stents and implants, etc., will basically say, okay, there you cannot charge more than a certain amount, right? That is also a pressure on the margins, right? So that is a regulatory aspect of it. A third is from an insurance perspective. And insurance, we are slowly becoming more insurance, but along with that, our insurance practices are also evolving. They're not in a place where it is geographically a developed geography would be, right? For example, tariffs for a situation, the way our healthcare inflation is, and the tariffs that we agreed at a particular point in time, if we lock a tariff for 3 years, it is not really accounting for the increases in the healthcare costs for a hospital all the time, right? So there are best practices in developed geographies which we have not yet adopted, but we will probably soon adopt. That will allow us to really smoothly function. But these are things in the short term. These are kind of causing price pressures and also margin pressures, right? From a hospital perspective, healthcare inflation is high, but I think most of it is to do with the supply chain costs that we are seeing and the other factors that I talked about right now. So these are some of the external factors that I see which are causing impact on the margins right now.
Sure, and I understand the constant struggle of not letting it cascade down to the pricing of the patient care delivery, right?
Right.
Because that demand is also increasing, and there's a huge funnel of patients who still are unserved, right? And I know hospitals are taking regular measures to also accommodate. What we've not spoken so far is the infrastructure cost. I think in order to improve the patient care, we are constantly investing, starting from, let's say, the parking of a hospital lot to kind of the bed facilities, automating everything, creating VRs also for surgeries, in the remote areas, etc. And that is also a huge investment, right? And we'll talk more around, how are you guys ensuring to not let it trickle down to the patients. I know you talked about certain policies that restrains the percentage of it getting rolled out to the patient, but what are the other things as an organization or as an HCP that you guys typically do at your organization level in order to cure it is something what I'd like to understand from Pradyut. So Pradyut, how do you ensure that these increased costs do not impact the patient at the end of the funnel, and ensure that patient experience does not get spoiled at a higher cost or maybe even at a lower cost offering, if you're not letting it cripple down to them.
So, hi Shraddha, thank you Let's Square for having me here today to actually have a talk with all you wonderful guys. See, I have had very valid points from my peers Saurabh and Arvind. And now the fact is that we have to understand the basics of the healthcare first. Why do we operate? So the basic premises of operating a healthcare facility can be split up into essentially 5 elements, which are directly affecting the patient's patient cycle inside the hospital, because these are the primary points of interface which the patient is interacting with. So these can be basically divided into: first, it is the consultants and the doctors; second, it is the nursing care; third, it is the facility management services, the front office, the housekeeping services; and fourth, it is the front office, the face of the hospital; and fifth, it is the cafeteria and the catering services that we provide to the patients.
Right.
So we have to distribute costs evenly throughout all these phases. We have to try to understand, because costing is not as simple as it seems to be in a healthcare scenario. If we take out, if we budget costs for a particular element and we take it out from the other element, it eventually affects the patient care cycle inside the hospital. So, but then if we focus on these primary 5 pillars of healthcare, which I had just mentioned, and take care of these in terms of costing, as well as understanding the criteria that patient would eventually be affected by these primary 5 things. So if we take care of that, it would be sort of adjusting and load balancing the tendencies within the hospital. As Arvind had rightly mentioned, that there are certain additional costs in terms of maintenance of equipments. You can have unprecedented failures inside the hospital. Maybe a HT meter can just blow off, and that too at the worst of times when it might be a public holiday, and then you'll have to run on diesel for a couple of days because you have to cater to the the repair of the HT meter, or maybe any other equipment which fails, and you have to have a backup mechanism for each and every equipment in the hospital, which is, especially in critical areas such as ICU, you have to have an absolute electricity backup for each single second, because you cannot just be running off power in those areas. So you'll have to factor cost for all these areas also, and these are actually major costs. In terms of technology migration, as you had mentioned, that providing a facility to the patient in terms of having an automated parking space for him, or maybe I happen to actually I would like to quote that example here. I think it's the Amsterdam airport, where the patient can by the virtue of holding his ticket in his hand, that the travelers can actually see the departure terminals, and it is individualistic for each traveler. It is not that they have a common board for where the flights would be departing. So if we try to assess and integrate this type of technology in the healthcare scenario, or maybe today we are talking in terms of AI also. So using the AI tech inside the hospital, these are all costs which eventually would have to be borne in if we have to sustain for a longer period of time. And but then the basic primary five pillars which the patient experiences within the hospital, if we take care of that, balancing the cost between them. And I always am a stern believer of the Amazon model, because you are very comfortable sort of shopping through that portal, because you absolutely know that that you would be provided with a service with no fuss at all. So if we can sort of provide that experience to the patient within the hospital, maybe we can always increase the revenue and also sort of cater to the cost that we bear to cater to the patients.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pradyut. I think I'd like to touch more upon these 5 pillars that you've spoken about a little bit more in detail, that what on micro level do we need to improve in each of these processes, or are there any underutilized service areas or business processes that you guys are prioritizing to improve in order to overall improve the efficiency. And also a great point about Amazon, I think I'm also a great fan and a great believer that there's so much to learn from the tech transformation and apply it to the hospital industry. Like, I mean, it's amazing how these e-marketplaces are handling the entire logistic cost, the entire infrastructure cost and everything, and still being able to deliver to the end consumer in the similar cost structure, right? Or in the similar price structure, so as to say, and earning a lot of money on top of it, right? There's so much to learn from them, and we'll talk more around these technology investments in that third section. This brings me to the second section, where we can shift our focus from cost to revenues now, and really look at how we can maximize our top line, or maximize our TAM also, in order to increase the revenues, right? And I'd like to start from Saurabh. Saurabh, I think you left a very good point about the missed opportunities, right? And while you spoke about the patient sitting in a certain area, and you can utilize that particular time to deliver a care to another patient, I have also come to know that staggering 30% of your patients that's a McKinsey study that says that 30% of the patients in typical hospital environment of a 500 sort of a bed facility are catered to as low equity patients, wherein they are treated as patients who require a minimal medical intervention, right? And that kind of impacts the overall treatment plans as well as the experience of these patients, right? And that's also in a way a lost income for you guys. So maybe, both of these points, if you could kind of help us understand how can we maximize our top line, increase our patient acquisition, as well as, take care of these lost growth opportunities.
Great. So let's talk about top line first.
Yeah.
So whenever you talk about top line on the revenue growth, there are 2-3 levers at our disposal. So one is simply footfalls. So, you get more volumes, your top line increases. The second thing is the ticket size, which is a product of your case mix, what specialty services and the severity of the cases you are doing. Plus, you have your payer, because, what happens is that if you are actually doing more of cash cases and you are doing, less of schemes and insurance cases, you earn more, because the yield per patient would be higher. Yeah. Also, I understand we're talking about top line, but there is a point of bottom line also. The third thing is, which is also related to the missed opportunity, is to reduce the stay of the patient and remove the non-value add. Because again, we talk about the value add component, it is only 45 to 50% in a hospital. The rest of the things are non-value add but essential, because I come from G lineage, so I'm talking about the lean concept. So there is a non-value add component with essential, which is all the insurance paperwork and all, but there is a component which is totally non-value add. So patient wait times and, patient just moving unnecessary in the hospital, waiting for the discharge medication, waiting for things like, cross consult. So these are not warranted for.
Absolutely.
And you can actually use technology, like in Medanta, what we did is post-COVID, we did 90% of our follow-ups because patients were coming from periphery on video. So that was a wonderful change which we started. So if you can actually reduce the patient stay in the hospital, work on the three parameters of top line, and also use technology to actually, not get patient in the system. I'm saying something very controversial, but actually, we are moving towards a state very soon where we will only be uh, we will only be treating acute cases in a hospital, and the unbundling of hospital services already started. Majority of the services will actually be delivered either at patient home, or they will be at very close distance from the hospital. And especially after COVID, this has accelerated. Patients are choosing services to near to their home or near to their office or wherever they are.
Yeah.
And hospitals will actually be doing acute care cases which are cutting edge, which requires some stay, and the ticket size per case will actually increase. So this is the future which we are talking about.
That's very interesting. And I think something more that I've heard in some of the single specialties hospitals, right, that I'm observing is that their priority as an overall business portfolio is to reduce the number of walk-ins as much as they can, because that gives them a lot of preparation time and work on a lot of things that you're talking about, right? The lean time, or
Yeah.
the non-active time, right, of the patients. So they're moving it completely digital, investing a lot in marketing, investing a lot in patient acquisition through digital mediums, and also at the same time applying a lot of automation to engage the patient the moment they step in, to impact what you've essentially talked about.
Yeah. So just one thing to add, Pradyot has already spoken about learnings from other industry, and though I'm lukewarm to actually taking things from other industries, and especially when we talk about US healthcare. So US healthcare is actually not a very successful healthcare. 40% of their cost is actually administrative, and it's not a model to, first of all, it's not a sustainable model. A lot of waste is there. But there are other countries which can be looked upon. What India needs is, because I've been in industry for over 21 years now, and I've seen a lot of these things which came from US and other developed countries massively failed in India. So what India needs is Bharat standards, Bharat way of thinking. Also, there are industries which are closely in resemblance to healthcare. One is airlines. So I actually saw this in a US hospital, a concept of pre-admit. So patient is pre-admitted one day prior before he actually lands up in a hospital, and there is zero waiting time at the reception. What they do is they call the patient. This was actually a borrowed concept from airline, where they actually ask you to web check-in, which is actually done in a hospital. They are doing wonders because there is no wait time. You actually know even the car number patient is coming from. We have tried to follow. There is a person, a valid driver, who will actually receive the patient. You can actually even sell this as a premium package, because everything is included. Also, you charge only once. So physiotherapy session is included. That patient is coming for an orthopedic consult. One X-ray will be required. So one X-ray is part of that. You charge it as a package. Patient doesn't stand. Patient has done a pre-admit. It's a smooth in, smooth out. The medicine is delivered up to 10 kilometers free of cost in the city limits. You are done.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent analogy. And are we moving towards that? Do you think
Yes, we are very much. There are a lot of hospitals which are doing that. We have also tried to incorporate some of the changes, and there is a lot to learn from other industries, especially airlines, and healthcare can imbibe a lot of those learnings.
Absolutely. No, thank you for this insight, and thank you also for a simplified definition of the revenue pillars. Sometimes we tend to forget the fundamentals, and I think you've laid them down very, very simply for the audience as well. Pradyut, I'll come to the point where you left, us with the insight on the cost pillars, right? The 5 processes or the 5 business functions that we spoke about. Can you help us understand if there are any growth opportunities to increase the efficiency of these business units or processes in order to maximize the revenues, or in order to kind of increase the patient engagement and experience overall?
See, the basic pillars are very essential. Actually, see, whenever a patient comes for a consultation with the doctor, he expects a certain level of service in the hospital. So, if that experience is primarily up to his expectations and the diagnosis is made accurately, then it would further help in getting the patient, maybe if it's a planned surgery, getting him over to the surgery. See, all these things are interlinked actually. So when a patient comes and gets admitted for a surgery, if he has had a pleasing experience with the admission process, there's no wait time, less of hassles in getting the admission, as Saurabh has mentioned, that maybe probably we can check him in, but that would not be actually feasible in almost many cases, because you need to have a certain PAC done before you get admitted for a surgery. But then more probably we can explore that option if it comes to that. And if he's a TPA or an insurance panel patient, he should, if we just can tell him whatever his limits are. Most of the problems and hassles arise because there is a lack of coordination and communication at various stages during the patient's journey within the hospital, which are actually to a certain level of extent they can be avoided. But then there are instances in which you just cannot avoid them, because there would be technological issues. Probably the servers of the insurance companies are down. You will not get a pre-auth in time. Other issues with respect to decoding of their policies. So if all these pillars which I had mentioned, if they can be integrated seamlessly with one another, and if we can provide the services according to the standard norms, probably yes, we can increase the revenue, because ultimately, see, what matters actually is patient satisfaction at the end of the day. If he goes satisfied, if he's got what he's aspired for, and if he gets treated well, the best part of marketing or maybe promotion is word to mouth. Still, I am old school in this, and probably my peers would also agree that whatever digital means or whatever above the lines or below the lines means that you use for marketing, nothing is better than word to mouth marketing, because that is the first hand experience that the patient has had in the hospital and about the services of the hospital. So revenue primarily for me depends upon patient satisfaction, and ultimately it all boils down to that.
Absolutely. Some great points made. And I think I would like to just share one insight that I could capture working with few hospitals. I think a classic case, sort of, that you spoke about can definitely be applied to international patients. The check-in and the whole preparation, and definitely that's enough and more of a market. And India is to become like the number 3rd country to kind of serve the international patients by in another 2 years. So that is one of the great opportunities. A business unit that I feel has been a little underutilized, or maybe more efficient to impact the top line directly, are the people who deal with surgeries, the counselors or the nursing staff who actually follows up with the patient after the doctor has provided them the medical prescriptions, right? And that's a journey which is still very loose in the funnel view, right? Because the tat of actually counselors reaching out to the patient to get them admitted is very huge right now. And there are few hospitals who are trying to bring that down and immediately create an engagement journey of the counselors right with the patients, and increase their surgical cases, impacting to the immense percentage of their overall revenues. Do you kind of agree, Pradyut? I mean, is that one business process that you've seen a challenge or growth opportunity in?
See, of course, counseling is a very important part in a patient's journey. The doctor does not probably has that much amount of time after the preliminary session with the doctor. Of course, he does counsel the patients that he is up for a particular surgery or a procedure that is planned for him. But then the making the patient understand the subtle nuances, the kind of facilities that he is entitled to within his insurance policy, the length of stay, the breakup, the estimate, everything it has to be done by the coordinators and the counselors. And then they also are very closely knit with the patient during his entire journey in the hospital, because the consultants would not be invariably having that much amount of a time to interact with them. The nursing staff, the nursing staff are the absolute foundation and the pillars in the hospital, because they are in a regular and a constant touch. So small and important things like appropriate nursing handovers during the patient's stay, the medication that has been recommended to the patient that is given on it to him on time, the recording of the patient care parameters during his stay. These all issues are actually critical for the satisfaction of the patient, and they do impact a lot during his stay.
Sure. Thank you, Pradyut, for that insight. Arvind, coming down to, summarizing what all Saurabh and Pradyut has said, and maybe gaining your expertise overall, what are the priorities in order to balance this equilibrium of cost and revenue? And what do you think are the hospital's top 3 priorities to ensure a readiness also to kind of serve to this immense number of patients, right? We can do a lot of things to increase patient acquisition or, having an increase in our digital investments, etc., right? But what are you guys doing as a hospital to be ready to even serve these number of patients? What are these 3 priorities? Technology or anything else? Like, if you could help us understand that.
Okay. We essentially, an advantage a hospital has over, let's say, traditionally digital business which tries to deliver healthcare is that the capex is there, right? I mean, for example, if you start a digital business like a pharmacy delivery, they have to really build a supply chain. Hospitals have that capex there; they have to really enable it, right? And that enablement through technology is where you would basically be able to address some of the scale increase that you need to have. Okay. So, for example, since COVID, there is increased demand for telehealth in terms of teleconsultations, delivery of pharmacy, getting at least collection of lab samples, and then delivery of lab reports remotely, etc., etc. So there is an increase in demand for that, right? So this is where technology would probably play a role, right? Healthcare can never be a completely tech business, right? I mean, it is a tech-enabled business. There would be a physical component which has to be made convenient by technology, right? And when you really improve the convenience, that is where you would basically see the scale being achieved, because anything that goes digital will reduce the cost of actual service for a particular operation, right? For example, a teleconsultation is definitely cheaper from an ecosystem cost than a physical visit to a doctor, but that also requires a generational shift, because if you're looking at 35 to 40% of a patient base, it is above 60, and they are still comfortable with the physical interaction with the doctor. But as we get into a newer generation or younger people, they will probably just prefer a more remote interaction, and will probably get more and more remote services, as Saurabh talked about, right? I mean, that is what I think would be the so our priority right now is to really be ready for the customer who's coming probably 5 years later and would require these conveniences, right? Second is access. We are a group which is present in tier 2, tier 3, and tier 1 towns, and we see a very varied set of patients in each of these hospitals, which varied consumer behaviors, right? For example, if I go to my customer in Trichy, he would probably never download an app on a phone and prefer to do all their interactions on WhatsApp or call on a call center. Compared to a person in Chennai or Bangalore, they would probably just download an app and do everything on the app, and even do a teleconsultation on the app. So I think we have to just understand these customers and then build service lines or build services which are convenient to that particular demographic, and that way that is one unique challenge that we have as a hospital group. So that is one focus area. Third is so these conveniences in the long term will lead to increase of revenue just because the customer or patient is finding it convenient to come to a hospital and work in a hospital, right? And so slowly we are moving some of these engagements digitally, getting onto LeadSquare as part of that strategy, essentially coming there and then having that continuous communication with the customer, educating them, etc., etc. A platform like LeadSquare will do that.
Sure.
And third is mainly using the excess capacity, right? I mean, for example, if you have, let's say, diagnostic services and radiology services, it is not as if in a hospital it will always be used 100% of the time. So can you really increase create business lines out of that? Let's say create teleradiology services or telepathology services, right? Serve other markets or serve other business areas, right? So that could be additional businesses, right? There are excess capacities in OTs, cath labs, etc., etc. So, right, so can we really build partnership which allows this excess capacity to be used? So that is additional revenue that is coming. So those are the opportunities that we have, and those are some of the focus areas that we would have. Again, using technology would probably just make it more convenient to really leverage these opportunities is what my view is.
Excellent, and great point to actually help us head to the next section. I think we all would agree that technology is one of the most important pillars to kind of contribute to cost reduction as well as revenue maximization today. With so much happening on the ABHA number allocation also to all the nationwide population, that's a great step to actually improve the journey of a patient being accessible to the hospitals, etc., at a compliance regulation. Also, kind of, it will facilitate a longer preventive data collection for us to improve our healthcare delivery services as well, right? Because we'll have everything as part of one data. Pradit, you make a very good point about automation and AI, right? And McKinsey says that it's a 1 trillion sort of a loss that we are having right now by not deploying AI and automation, right? So I would like to kind of pick up from the point that you left and the technology investment that Arvind just spoke about. That how does your department approach some of the priorities that Pradit has, that Arvind has also spoken about? How do you guys prioritize these technology investment? There's so much happening, right? Infrastructure, and then something that Saurabh spoke about, then acquisition, CRM, EHR, HIS, right? And a lot more, right? How do you prioritize? What are your key metrics to assess these technology investments and then boil down to, let's say, the top 3 for a year, etc.?
So to prioritize between these options, first, to prioritize in any sort of an investment, you have to have the budget. That is the basic thing that you have to bear in mind. Then you need to have the trained and qualified personnel to actually execute that technology. And then timelines also do matter. So in a hospital scenario, basically, basic things such as HIS, CRM, they are now, you have to integrate them at the initial stage when you begin the operations of the hospital. As far as investing in AI and high-end technologies is concerned, it's still at a very premature stage because machine learning is still in a nascent stage of development.
Yeah.
We have to feed them with the appropriate data to actually make a correlation between the diagnosis, what the images that we feed them, the prognosis through which the images that they can learn. So it's still in a very nascent stage. I have had firms approaching the hospital requiring the data. So patient confidentiality is also another factor that you have to bear in mind before giving them the images and the data. So as far as AI is concerned, I think eventually the healthcare industry is progressing towards that in various sections, not too aggressively. But yes, technology is a very important aspect. Let's take an example of processing the TPA cases. So first we used to have different portals for different insurance companies through which we used to upload the claims and maybe then track them and know the status of whether the claim is being approved or not, maybe the pre-auth is there or not. Now we have portals and solutions which can integrate the entire scenario into one place, and we can track the updates on that particular portal. So that actually cuts down the time and also eases out the operations in facilitating the patient. Likewise, we now have smart beds which can monitor the patient's ECGs when they are lying down on the bed itself. You don't need to attach, or the blood pressure on the bed itself, you don't need to attach any additional equipments. And we have smart ICUs. So those technology integrations which are pivotal for patient care and increase the efficiency in medical operations have to be first implemented, and then maybe we can graduate towards getting into the more technologically advanced aspect of things, which is AI and machine learning and things like that.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Pradyut. I think very well laid down what is the basic and what could be a want, right? And it has to directly impact the patient first, which is a great, insight. Arvind, building on to that, what are the top 3 technology investments for you guys today? We spoke about AI, automation, etc. But are there any top 3 investments that are essential for you for this financial year in order to improve the overall patient healthcare, preventive healthcare, as well as maximize your, revenues and reduce costs?
Yeah, so I'll just be a bit boring in this answer. Primarily my take till now in the healthcare, working in healthcare for some years, is that we are not digitized enough. Okay, that is the biggest problem that we have, right? You cannot really establish a journey of a patient throughout a hospital and really account for every touch point that they have. Okay. There are aspects which are digitized, like for example, radiology, diagnostics, etc. But anything a doctor does to a patient is still flying in papers right now. Okay, so you're not really establishing a continuum of what has happened to a patient as a part of that journey, right? And until you know that, you are still handicapped in really servicing the patient completely. Okay, so our biggest focus is on digitization, which is something really all hospitals have been trying to do for 20 years, is to implement an EMR, which is basically used by everybody, right? And that is a continuous battle that keeps on happening. But it is something that we should not give up, because that is where you would essentially be able to map out the whole journey of the patient, right?
Absolutely.
Now, then we are setting up transactional systems which are really helping that. So EMR being one of the transactional systems, CRM or Lead Square being another transactional systems, and then digital touch points that we anyways have: a customer app, a website, a patient portal, etc. I think we should all, from healthcare, and especially if we're working in healthcare technology, should pay attention to what Government of India and NHA is doing right now, because those are really massive measures where if healthcare hospitals especially get on board, would probably change the ecosystem. One is all the 3 milestones for ABDM, which is milestone 1 is for ABA creation and then mapping that ABA ID, because it will essentially allow us to identify a patient uniquely. And then milestone 2 and 3 for really interoperability between hospitals. That will make it very, very convenient for patient to really exchange health information. And then the 4th one is the NHCX, which is the health exchange, right? And that the claim exchange, because our insurance costs today, the administration, and I've seen some people have put a question on discharge process taking so much time in a hospital. A lot of that has to do with really accounting for all the services and then getting an approval from the insurance. And that is a lot of it, even with TPA portals, a lot of manual process, because we're still uploading PDF documents and all that stuff and making phone calls and emails, right? And that NHCX, which is the National Health Claim Exchange, basically has brought in an exchange which is all API-based interaction with insurance companies and hospitals. So those are some of the initiatives we need to focus on and get on board to, because I've been part of these workshops and there is very less participation from healthcare companies in these. But these are some things which we really need to be part of, because that would probably just be good for the ecosystem in the future. And I think they are very proactive in addressing those concerns in terms of what healthcare institutions are, but I think we have to play our role. So this is something that we are focusing on, and probably next year before getting to AI, we are doing small AI experiments, but the focus is on really building these fundamentals correctly, because as an industry, we don't have those fundamentals right now. Even talking about US industry, about 10 years ago, they had something called as meaningful use, where they actually incentivized healthcare institutions to digitize their data, and they spent about 35 billion on that. Um, uh, we are a poor country, we cannot really spend as much money, but slowly there are incentives coming in. But I think we have to focus on digitizing our workflows first before we get into AI, and that acceleration will happen very fast, because once we have digitized data, everything else is a commodity. We can pretty much adopt them and then get into the AI journey and really deliver super value, because we are great people. We have great quality of care. We just need to adopt this technology. We really need to document that all the. So I think that is something that we need to focus on, and that is what we are focusing on right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, wonderful point made. And I think data and analytics in a timely manner as well. I think time is a very important factor right now. As you rightly said, government is doing so much, but is now the time to leverage all these insights and keep building on it internally in the hospitals as well? The answer is definitely yes. And obviously, with so many technology investments happening, on the equipments of care, on infrastructure, etc., I think we tend to kind of lose a sight on what is most important, and that is data. And patient 360-degree view, while government is doing a lot to do that, I think we at this stage also can start building that journey of patient 360, and providing them better engagement and experience. Thank you so much, Arvind, for helping us understand that. Saurabh, coming from these investments highlighted, I and a lot of my peers will benefit from this particular question. You deal with so many technology vendors on regular basis, evaluating their product, solution offerings, etc., right? What are the top 3 or 4 hurdles, or maybe your expectations from these tech vendors, in order to be able to understand the healthcare industry better and maybe serve to your problem statements in an accurate manner? If you could help us understand and maybe bridge this gap at least on our stand, it will be very helpful.
Great. So before actually I dive down into a question, I would like to just touch upon the technology. Yeah. So whenever you make a technology investment, and at least for us, there are 3 pillars or 3 decision points we look at. So the first and the foremost is anything which adds to the precision. So anything which adds to more precision in diagnosis or treatment will be the first priority always, and that should be the priority of healthcare industry. The second thing is anything which actually increases the throughput. So I understand we have been trying with AI and other technologies. We have also put AI, like in radiology, especially with diagnostics. If something which can really multiply the capacity of my radiologist, because they are a scarce resource and they are paid very high. So anything, any algorithms, that would be my second priority, because, there's decreasing my cost, increasing throughput. The third thing is anything which can reduce my cost or can generate additional revenue. So, if I have Pradyot spoke about smart bed, dozy, something like that. If I can charge for it, why not? We will, it acts to precision, it acts to, 0 cardiac arrest in the ward, and I can charge for it. So I will very well go for it. So these are 3 of, key decision criteria when it comes to technology in a healthcare setting. Now, coming back to your question, how we want our vendors or, partners to be.
I think contribute.
Yeah. So there are 3 basic hurdles whenever, you talk about leveraging technology or solutions in a hospital. One is, of course, a clear-cut definition or visibility of ROI. Now, whenever it comes to any technology solution or big capex, the returns are actually quite delayed, and that is not just because the solution is flawed. It is basically an adaptation. So, what happens is that again, there are researches which shows that the minimum investment in any tech AI-based solution can range from 50 lakhs to 1 CR and can go into several crores. So, a clear-cut bridge or a waterfall on how the ROI will flow in, what is the bare minimum, that is must. So if our partners can actually help us to assess how the ROIs will flow in, that would be helpful. The other thing is, some of the times, it might not be possible to actually invest that much. So pay per use models, rental models will be of great help, and they are coming. The second thing which we look into is the attitude and behavioral training, because in India you have a lot of chalta and attitude, and again, the more you talk about this is less. It is very difficult from shifting to automated process or something different from what you are doing, and that is actually operational efficiency, doing the things in a better way than they were yesterday. But people don't think alike. They say, sir, yahan to yahi system chalta hai, and they will not understand, it is in betterment of them. So we actually expect change agents, people who can hold hands. If there is a new device being used in any inpatient procedure, there are vendors who come inside the OTs and they help us. So that is what we look at. And the third thing is continuity in operations. What happened is during COVID, and it also goes back to the total cost of ownership model, because during COVID, I was actually running one of the largest corporate hospitals in a tier 2 city, Lucknow, Medanta, and we saw our almost 95 to 98% of the consults going to video, and even doctors who never used technology, they were quite keen. Not only that, there are researches which says that 80 to 85% of in smaller hospitals went into some sort of app or some sort of video consult because they were there to survive. Now, I do understand, and somebody wrote in chat also that it's not always clinically possible to have video consult. But again, there are 50-60% of the use case which we can do. But the worst case is we are back to 80 to 90% of the consults being done in physical form, some of which might not be required because again there's waste of lot of things, patient time, hospital resources. So again, anything which can aid to continuity of service, our partners can support, that is welcome. I think these three are the basic minimum or bare minimum we look for whenever we talk to our partners or we onboard them.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. And you made a great point. I'm just going to maybe spend 10 seconds on it. You said ROI, right? Is something that you definitely look for your vendors to narrate to you, right? How do you think ROI would differ? And you mentioned 3 points, right? Precision and impacting your cost and revenues, etc. Right? So do you want the ROI to be spread across all 3 buckets, or are there any top ROI buckets centralized across the organization to look at when you're making technology vendor selections?
So need not necessary that it should be spread across all the 3 buckets. But yeah, there will be a prioritization. As I say, anything which adds to precision, anything which adds to better patient care, anything which adds to patient experience, and we can charge for it, because we are all speaking in healthcare, and we are talking about scheme, Ayushman Bharat and all. The problem is, there is no cost study. Cost plus margin is not what India pays as best, and what Medicare and Medicaid does. There is no scientific study which has been done. So it's more like a, you take CGHS rate or the CHS rate. So anything I am more than happy to invest in. If it can be reimbursed or it can be paid, I can charge premium for it, because that particular thing might be a premium thing. But anything which adds to precision, there is where my first investment will go. Even if I need to, tweak my processes to be more operationally efficient. But again, anything which adds to, patient comes to the hospital for treatment, that's the first thing. Rest, everything is secondary. So anything which adds to better treatment, better outcomes, better satisfaction, that's where my vote goes.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Saurabh, for answering for that follow-up question. And I think we are almost on time, and maybe we can invite some questions from the audience. And I'd like Shibani also join us.
Yeah, hi. I think, and I'm so glad that our panel here was multitasking and looking at questions and sort of answering them on the go. I will actually pick up one of them that came in earlier via our landing page. The question reads, how to maintain or increase margins in mature hospitals when costs are going up and we're not in a position to increase tariffs in line with the cost increase. Is there anyone who'd like to take that up?
I can try, there is a hospital life cycle, So, now previously the gestation period used to be as high as 3 to 4 years. Now it has actually come down to 18 months, and some hospitals are even breaking even in 12 months. But there is a place where the hospital matures. So, the actual thing is to reinvent themselves to actually, first of all, cut the clutter. As we are talking about services which are highly paid and services, which might actually be moved outside the hospital. So uncluttering means there are services which are not yielding lot of value. Like we have a, say, ophthalmology suite, for example. We might be a tertiary level, referral hospital. Now this ophthalmology can actually move in a secondary satellite clinic near to the hospital, and hospitals have done it. And you can use that particular space for anything high end. You can put a robot or you can put a suite. So this is first, you can look at uncluttering. The second thing is you can look at the premium services, including the life cycle. So you can target the HNI population. You can have a home-based services, and that will increase your ticket size. The third thing is you can actually look at the associated elements like home-based care lab. We actually in my previous organization launched executive health checkup at home. So again, the footfalls were not coming in the hospital. We were utilizing their space for something. We were charging extra. People were more than happy to do that. So you need to look at ways and means. Again, going back to airlines, at one point of time they were actually selling stuff in the air, and I've seen a lot of hospitals having fancy restaurants, tuck shops inside the places. So there is no rocket science, but there are multiple things you can actually do.
Okay. Then Ajay has been sharing so many insights throughout the session, so I can't leave, conclude the session without his question. His last question was, what is the role of L&D in adoption of tech?
Yeah, so Ajay, L&D is absolutely essential for adoption of anything in the hospital. See, for operations is primarily the continuity of processes and optimizing them to a certain extent at every point of time. So if you want the continuity of the processes, you have to first train your team well, and then as in how you proceed further, you have to retrain them so that they actually are absolutely wonderful at whatever they are doing. So L&D, I would say that is very pivotal, and in any scenario, in adoption of tech, in adoption of probably a new process, also maybe starting a new department, it is very essential.
Okay, and one more last question I think I have for Arvind. Arvind, the question reads, how do you balance patient conveniences with business liabilities? For example, dealing with patients that want services first and then avoiding making payments due to frivolous reasons.
That's a very complicated question. It's basically handled case by case. There's no policy for this. I think there cannot be a policy for this. You have to address it case by case. I mean, we have counselors for doing that. Essentially, there's typically a process of billing counseling before the procedure, which provides an estimate of the process so that there are no surprises. During the process also, there is enough advice given, and at the end there are situations like this, but I don't think there is any policy and there is no process that is set up apart from just sitting with and understanding what is the particular case all about and how to address that case.
Thank you so much. I'll let Shraddha to share any concluding remarks, but a fantastic session. Thank you so much to all the panelists.
Thank you so much, Shivani, and thank you, audience, for such great questions as well and staying engaged with us. And thank you so much, Saurabh, Pradyut, Arvind. It was great, and it was a very, very knowledgeable session for me. And I can imagine how audience will be getting benefit out of these very small time duration to actually achieve at such greater insights about costs, revenues, technology investments, priorities, all in such a simplified manner. So thank you so much for sharing this 70 years of experience of healthcare in such a small time and in such simplified fashion. And we look forward to kind of speaking with you, offline and maybe, staying connected. Thanks a lot for joining us at Lead Square.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.